What if I told you I have a trusted source of one of the most potent drugs? It's free, it's without any nasty side effect. It's fastly available. Would you be interested? And what if I told you that you experienced it at least once in your life and probably multiple times, maybe even every day? Can you guess what I'm talking about? Bonjour, life sparklers. It's Claire. Welcome to the Integrally Alive podcast, practical wisdom and tools for unconventional humans to embody their unapologetic self and create a life of freedom and joy. As usual, you can find show notes and resources on the website integrallyalive.com. So this drug, what do you think? Oxytocin, baby. Yeah, the love hormone that is released every time we have meaningful interactions with living beings, and especially touch. Yeah, hugs. Love hugs. So meaningful interactions. Because, yeah, we can be surrounded by 100 people and still lack connection. Being alone and being lonely are two very different things. And it's even worse. Sometimes being surrounded by people who don't get you can make you feel even more lonely. So a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with a lovely young man with a great vision. Because you see, when he was growing up as a teenager, he felt isolated in his hometown because his hobby and his views on the world were not mainstream where he lived. And there was one bar, though, one place, one oasis where he felt at home. A place where he could be just himself and people would accept him just as he was. And that made a lot of difference for him. So now he's moved and grown up and he has decided to create such a place in the city he now lives in. It's, somewhere where people could go and feel at home, feel welcomed, and connect with each other without judgment. And I found this project beautiful. And I have a similar vision. I will tell you more about it later on. But, we all experienced a moment when we were the weirdo in the room. And it doesn't make it easy to open to others then. It's easy to have superficial conversations, talk about the weather, talk about the football team, whatever, and so on. But that doesn't spark oxytocin. That doesn't make us feel connected and met where we are. By the way, I'm curious, do you know you're weird? What's something that's sometimes considered strange or unusual about you? And that might, sparkle curiosity or rejection in others. Myself, I have lots. And to name a few, being a sailor, being a nomad, dancing in weird places for some people, like more than weird places, actually dancing where people cannot hear music or when you're not supposed to dance, like at my desk on co-working spaces. And some find it weird and some love it. We'll talk more about that. So I just want to just want to talk about intimacy now, because intimacy happens when you're willing to take risk. Connection, intimacy, happens when you're willing to take risks. And when we find a place, a space where we can recognize that everyone is a weirdo in his or her own way, and that is okay, then we can relax into this acceptance. And for this to happen, though, we have to accept that no matter what we do, we will always be a weirdo for someone, at least someone. And when we are in that space of openness to weird, whatever that is, two things happen when we meet people. Well, on one hand, maybe you meet someone and you can see you are the same kind of weird. So actually, your weird is actually normal for that person. You get them. Like me, when I meet other nomads, for example. They get me. I don't have to explain, why I'm moving around and how I do it, or any other questions I usually get when a non-nomad try to figure out that part of me. And it feels easy then. You feel heard, you feel understood, because you both understand the same things. So you have common ground. And so you can relax into that. You can go deeper right away. And maybe you meet someone and, well, they have this thing, and they're different. They're weird to you. And vice versa. And still, you are both human beings trying to connect to each other. So when you can come from that place of, let's see what's common to us. Oh, we're both human beings. We're both having the same need to connect. And you can get curious about them, even if you don't get them. And I call it being a student of people. And I love to discover how people think, what they experience, what's their life like. And in these moments, not only do I learn more about them and their way of doing the words, but in these conversations, it also shows me who I am, how I'm doing the word myself. It informs me a lot about my way of thinking and doing. Because of course, when you are curious about the differences, it gets you to define who you are, where you stand, right? And eventually, you can help but notice what is common between you two. And that's what I call meeting the human being behind the word. Because you see, we need human connection. We need oxytocin. Not only is it one of the most potent drugs, but we need it in our life. And there's more and more studies showing its place in depression, in anxiety, and in many of the mental health struggles. And there's a catch to that. If we meet and only open to people whom we are weirdos, we end up feeling like we actually end up like feeling really weird. Like we need to explain ourselves again and again, and like kind of misfits. But if we meet and only open to people with our kind of weird, then we might end up being very close-minded and pretty judgmental, because we are never getting close to differences and to people who are different from us. So we need to stay open to both our tribe and strangers. So how do we meet others at a deep level? How do we meet humans behind the windows? Really simple. It requires a little bit of courage, and that's all. It requires first to be aware of who you are and how you show up, and a willingness to be seen as you are without masks. And notice that I'm not saying the love yourself first. It is much more about connecting to yourself and loving yourself at that point. And I probably do a podcast about that, because it's something I hear a lot, and I get kind of aggravated hearing that, because I disagree with that. So anyway, awareness of who you are and willingness to show up as you are, to be seen. When you are in that space, then you have to accept that everyone is a weirdo in his or an own way. And because you are open to meet yourself at a deep level, then you have to be open to meet others at a deep level. So you have to be in the space of willingness to meet the human being behind the weirdo. Behind your first impression, behind the label we might put on someone. And that's pretty much it. When you're in that space and you're saying in this space of openness, it's automatic. You're curious. You show up as, who are you? Instead of, oh, you're weird. And that makes all the difference. Because when you show up, amazingly as, who are you? People open up and they are open to connect with you and, connect. Even if on the surface, you might have more differences than things that you share. But in the end, over everything and behind everything, you're both human. You both need connections. So yeah, that's pretty simple. It might help though to learn how to private speak. And private speaking for me is the art of connecting to yourself and others. Because obviously, the more you understand why we communicate the way we do and how to become more flexible, to have more options on the way you communicate, the easier it gets to connect. Simple, right? So things like understanding the different levels of communication, for example, to adjust your level to the one your conversation partner is using, like switch from oh my god, switching from informational conversation to emotional conversation, for example. Because if you don't know how to do that, sometimes you might have had these experiences already of conversation getting amazingly and surprisingly frustrating, where both of you are trying to communicate, and it seems like there's a mismatch, but you cannot really pinpoint it. Just you're both using a different language. It's exactly like me being French and speaking French, and you're speaking English, for example, and trying to communicate in that way. That's going to be difficult. It's pretty confusing, even if we are coming from the best intentions. But when you can adapt the level of communication to match the level of communication of your conversational partner, then there is mutual understanding, and it makes things much more easy. And well, here on the podcast, I share wisdom and tools about private speaking on and off. And you can look into topics as well, such as nonviolent communication, authentic relating. There are many, many approaches to that. And by the way, they all come back to meeting the human before anything else. And of course, the best way to do that is to practice it. So that's why I will be starting soon, and you will be able to join me for human to human and networking meetings locally where I am and online. And I will share more on that when it gets closer to the very start. But for now, what is one thing you can do to become a student of people and meet everyone as a human being, just like you? And that's it. That was your weekly dose of fierce love, a mix of love and brutal honesty. Boom! Your life just got easier. Don't thank me. Thank you for showing up to your unapologetic self. And I'm very glad you like it. You want more? Subscribe so you get your weekly dose. You want even more? Hop on my socials and share your thoughts and comments. And I reply. I love to read them, and I reply with fierce love. And that's it. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye bye.